Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare.
Welcome to Satsang. It's so beautiful to be joining with you all, connecting through this extraordinary invention of technology that allows us to be here on the flowing, beautiful waters of Mother Ganga. And with you, in your homes, in your rooms. We've always been together, in spirit, in soul, in love, in truth. But that requires a very deep, very subtle spiritual experience and spiritual knowing to live in that awareness of that oneness. Until we get there, the universe has provided us with these wonderful tools, these wires, these cameras, these computer machines to connect us, to allow us across thousands of miles, across countries and continents, to be together in satsang. I hope that you joined us yesterday as well for our very first meditation program. We started yesterday, every week, Mondays and Fridays, we're going to have a special monsoon meditation. You can't tell from looking now, it's still sunny, but theoretically today is the first official day that the monsoon is coming. So Mondays and Fridays we'll be here on the banks of Ganga doing beautiful meditation. And of course our satsang is Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays as always. And tonight it's so beautiful to have our beloved, my beautiful brother in heart, in spirit, brother in the divine, Tommy Rosen, and his group who are diving together into the yoga of freedom and are joining us this evening collectively for our satsang. We'll begin, as always, with a question that's come in advance, and then take questions of those of you who are joining here with us, or those that are coming to our team in advance. It's a very sacred and very precious time to be able to be together in love, in truth, in satsang. If there was one truth that someone could believe which would change their life and place them onto a fulfilled, joyful path, what would that truth be? I think the truth that for the vast majority of us would have the biggest impact on truly transforming our lives from suffering, from yearning, from grabbing, from pushing away, from all of the ways that we live in suffering. I think that truth would be, you are whole, you are full, you are complete, you are divine. I know that sounds like 4 or 5 different truths, but it's actually all one truth. In Sanskrit it's one. You need 4 or 5 different English words, but the truth in Sanskrit is one. There's a beautiful mantra in the Upanishads that says, Purnamada, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamudachyate, Purnasya, Purnamadaya, Purnameva Vashishyate. And Purn means fullness, completeness, wholeness, divinity. And what the mantra basically says is that, the capital T, that, meaning the divine, the supreme, God, the universe, whatever word we use, is full, is whole, is complete, is perfect. And this, which has been removed from that, created out of that, which has come from that, is also therefore full and whole and complete and perfect and divine. Spiritually, it sounds very deep and complex. It's actually really very simple. Think about it from a mathematical way. We learn in probably elementary school, if not certainly by junior high. We learn about infinity. And when we learn about infinity, what we learn is that whatever you do to infinity, it stays infinity. So infinity divided by 7 billion is what? Infinity. Infinity minus 7 billion, infinity. So the divine is infinite, whole, complete, perfect. And this, us, who have been created by, created out of the metaphoric drop of the ocean, of that infinity, we are also infinite. That is also still infinite, and we are infinite. And I think that this is the truth that would have the greatest ability to transform us, because we go through our life feeling like we lack. We're not smart enough. We're not successful enough. We're not happy enough. We're not good enough. We're not worthy enough. We're not rich enough. We're not beautiful enough. We're not young enough, or for some of us, we're not old enough. There's always all these things that we're not enough of. And it leads to this sense of yearning, of lack. So then our life focus is on filling those holes, how to make myself feel more, how to make myself feel enough, full. Few big chocolate cakes should do it. Some alcohol, some drugs, a lot of indiscriminate sexual partners, shopping. It's a whole endless variety of ways that we go out to fill that sense of lack within ourselves, to make ourselves feel full, whole. And it's ridiculous on a pragmatic, logical, intellectual level that somehow a bunch of chocolate cake or arms laden with shopping bags could somehow make up for a sense of lack inside. But tragically, the mind is not usually nearly as pragmatic or logical as we would like to think we are. The emotional mind, especially when we find ourselves in the throes of addiction, and whether it's an addiction to something as soft as food or distractions, social media, or an addiction to something as hard as heroin or cocaine, doesn't matter. They serve the same purpose. It's to give me a sense of fullness. But if I knew that I were already full, if I knew that I were complete, if I knew there was nothing I lack, I wouldn't be trying to fill holes in me that didn't exist. And here's the beautiful piece. It's all beautiful, but here's another beautiful piece of that truth. The core of who we all are is divine, is infinite. Everything we are doing is an attempt to return to that true state of who we are, which means nothing you do is wrong. Nothing is bad. All of that additional layer of guilt that we have about the ways that we try to fill ourselves when they don't work, and then we're just in debt and broke and miserable and hungover and sick. And then there's also guilt. But realize that nothing that you're doing to feel full is wrong. The instinct is actually beautiful. The instinct is actually the purest yearning of ourself to experience the truth of ourself. It is the purest yearning of the suffocated, contracted, in a box, small self that's told from every which way on the outside, look like this, act like that, have this job, have this skin color, dress in these clothes, label yourself in this way. But internally we know, we feel it. We feel suffocated. We know that's not who I am. I'm not my role. I'm not my job. I'm not my skin color. I'm not my body. I'm not my bank account. I'm not my race or religion or sexual orientation. We feel it. We know it. And so we are looking for ways to experience it more fully, more frequently. And since so many of us sadly don't have access to the spiritual teachings and the spiritual way, we go about it with whatever we have nearby. Food, drugs, alcohol, shopping, Facebook, sex, whatever it may be. But the yearning is right. Everything in the universe is trying to return to its source. Fire rises up because the source of fire is the sun. Water goes down, pulled by gravity. The source of water is the ocean. The earth comes down. We are trying to return to our source, which is infinity, which is fullness, which is wholeness, completeness. So all of these ways are just misguided, ignorant attempts, dysfunctional attempts for a very real, very true, very valid, very beautiful, very pure spiritual yearning. But if we knew that source is within me, then we wouldn't be looking for it in misguided places outside. If I know I'm full and I have access through my meditation, through my prayers, through my yoga, if I have access to the experience of fullness within me, then I'm no longer tempted by all of that outside. And this is what our meditation and yoga practice does. What our spiritual practice does, what prayer does. Connects us. Not to the fullness that's outside of us, but to the fullness that's within us.
We have a question that's come in advance from one of Tommy Rosen's students called Indio. How do I find my path? I feel I've no direction, and too soon I will die not having fulfilled my higher purpose on this earthly plane.
Great, yes. Time is very short. Whether we have another 60, 70, 80 years, or another 6, 7, 8 days. None of us knows. 6, 7, 8 minutes. There's no guarantee. No warranty this body comes with. Guaranteed for at least 70, 80 good years. There's no guarantee. So even age isn't anything to go by. So yes, time is very short. And the universe is very patient. If we don't make it this time around, we'll come back. This whole cycle of reincarnation, that's what it's there for. It's there to give us this infinite number of opportunities to get it right, to learn the lesson, to find that purpose. So it's up to us. And I mention this because we're already stressed enough. There's already enough deadlines. We already have so many to-do lists, so many action items, so many reminders constantly beeping us. So many ways in which we already feel like we fall short. So don't let this be yet another thing that you're not good at. Don't let it be yet another thing that you feel guilty about. Oh yeah, haven't exercised today and still haven't found my purpose. Don't let it be like that. Recognize. Time is infinite. There's a beautiful saying that if you imagine a mountain, and the mountain is a mile high and a mile long, mile high mountain, mile wide mountain, and once every 100 years a bird flies by that mountain with a silk scarf in its beak, and it brushes that silk scarf against the 100-foot tall, mile tall, mile wide mountain. Brushes that silk scarf against it once in 100 years. The amount of time it would take for that mountain to be eroded by that silk scarf, that's as long as we've been doing this. As long as we've been coming back again and again. And so, while on the one hand, time is very short, and this human life is very precious, on the other hand, exhale. Take a deep breath. You've got time. But here's what's important to think about. What are your priorities? Because that purpose, the only purpose that really matters, is that purpose of waking up. The highest purpose is not about figuring out, are you supposed to go to medical school or law school? Or are you supposed to do this teacher's training program or that teacher's training program? Or are you supposed to get this master's degree or a diploma in that? Should you get a job right away? Should you go back to school? That's not the question of the highest purpose. They're beautiful options. They open up a world of possibilities. But that's not the highest purpose that you're here to figure out. So don't confuse the what with the who. Meaning, don't confuse the what you do with the who you are. Your highest purpose is not about figuring out what to do. Your highest purpose is figuring out who you are. And when you know who you are, you're going to know what to do in all of the ways that matter. And so ask yourself, what's my priority? Is my highest priority figuring out what job to get? Or is my highest priority figuring out the truth of who I am? Because we've only got a certain number of hours each day. Our brain can only focus on one thing at a time. So you can't simultaneously run north and south at the same time. So it doesn't mean don't have a beautiful job. It doesn't mean don't be in the world or involve yourself, engage yourself, enjoy. It doesn't mean that. But it means ask yourself, what's my priority? Is my priority to figure out who I am? If it is, then the what is going to be things that are geared toward that. It's going to be practices, paths, that allow me, in the fullest and most complete sense, to step up to that plate, to accept that beautiful invitation that the universe has given us to wake up now, right now. No prerequisites required. Right now, to know who you are. Or is the focus on, how am I going to get to the top of the food chain? How am I going to have the highest income? How am I going to have the most prestige? How am I going to get on the cover of that magazine? Because if those are the priorities, then it's a different focus. But lastly, when the focus becomes knowing who you are, it doesn't mean that you don't act in the world. In fact, my favorite spiritual scripture teaching is the Bhagavad Gita, which is rooted in the whole premise, the whole tenet of action, of doing our duty, of standing up, of being engaged. But engaged as a tool in the hands of the divine. Being engaged not about my will, what I want, how I want it, when I want it, what I think is fun, what I think is glamorous, what I think I enjoy, but rather how I, with my talent, with my ability, with my energy, with my resources, how I am supposed to be the tool in the hands of the divine. So yeah, time is short, but the beautiful thing is, it only takes a moment. It only takes a moment to wake up. But you have to choose which moment and when. There's a beautiful story of a student, a seeker in a monastery with the guru, and he says to the guru one day, he says, I'm not experiencing God. I want to experience God, but I'm not experiencing God, and when I meditate, my mind wanders. So the guru takes the disciple out to the river, takes him into the river, and he holds his head under the water. And the disciple's thrashing about, trying to get up. He can't breathe, gasping for air. Finally, at the very last minute, before he actually passes out, the guru pulls him out of the water. The disciple's panting, gasping for breath. And the guru says, did your mind wander? The disciple's like, no, my mind didn't wander. All I was thinking about was air. I just wanted air. And the guru says, when you want God, like you wanted air, your mind won't wander. Want God, want awakening, the way that you wanted air when you were drowning, and your mind will stop wandering. So when you want that more than you want anything else, you'll find it.
This is another question from Tommy's group, from Helen. And she's asked, At times, I think the heart of the world is broken. How do we continue to move through life with love when there is so much conflict in our inner and outer worlds?
Beautiful. Fortunately, the heart of the world is not broken, but the mind is in many ways. The consciousness is in many ways. Our priorities, our focus, our way of thinking has gotten broken. We have not started too recently, we've been planting seeds of separation, seeds of conflict, seeds of violence for a long time. The minute that we start thinking that we are separate from the world, the minute that we start thinking that in order for me to have, I have to deprive you of it, the minute that we start thinking in competition, that's when we start to erode away the consciousness in the world. Our illusion of separation, our focus on me, our focus on development as somehow interlinked with consumerism, that somehow the more I have, the more successful I am. We have started focusing on things outside, possessions, material objects, having more. The more we focus on that, the less we're able to focus on the oneness, the truth of who we are. And so we build ourselves into these walls of us and them. And the walls get thicker and thicker. We create walls on the basis of race, the basis of religion, color, culture, creed, everything. As many walls as we can build, we build them. Socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, age, weight. I mean, so many things. Wherever we can, we're building these walls, us versus them. And what it does is, it erodes our own internal consciousness, and it erodes our ability to operate in the world with consciousness. Because personally, the more separate I convince myself I am from the rest of the world, the less truth I'm living in. If the truth is oneness, and I convince myself that I'm only one with people of my race, of my religion, of my skin color, of my gender, my group, I've eroded my own consciousness. I've cut myself off from truth. If I convince myself that I am separate from the waters of Mother Ganga, from the mountains, from the trees, from the air, I've eroded my own consciousness because I've cut myself off from truth. I've cut myself off from spirit. I've cut myself off from that source of fullness, of completeness, of wholeness, the truth of who I am. And when collectively we agree on this narrative of separation, we erode our collective consciousness. Violence then becomes acceptable because they are different than us. But violence did not begin today. Conflict did not begin today. We're just seeing it today because it's happening on our corners. And there are social media videos showing it to us. But think about the women and the children in God knows how many third world countries in the world, working in sweatshops to produce an infinite number, an infinite variety of items, clothing, mobile phones, whatever it is that we want to keep buying, cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. Why do we have sweatshops? Why do we have bonded labor like that? Why is it even permitted in this world? Because we, the consumers, want more and more and more. We want it cheaper, 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 and we feel separate from where our things are produced. We feel separate from whoever it is that spun this cotton into a sari that I'm wearing. How many of us ever even think about the farmers who grew the cotton? About the chemicals that were sprayed because we'd rather have cheap cotton than organic cotton? About the cancer that the farmers and their families have because of the chemicals that are sprayed on the cotton? We feel separate from them. How many of us think about the way that our food is produced? About the farmers and their families who are suffering from cancer and birth defects and all kinds of illnesses because of the chemicals, the toxic chemicals that they have to work with every day because we don't want to spend a little bit extra on organic or fair trade. So violence has been going on for a long time in this myth of separation. How many of us, every time we sit down to eat a hamburger or we buy bone broth, think about the indigenous people in the Amazon whose land has been cut down, whose trees have been cut down, because that's the cheapest place in the world to graze cattle. And because the Amazon has been cut down by the beef industry. But we feel separate. We're not sitting down to a plate of hamburgers thinking about the indigenous people whose land that was, who were kicked off their land so that cows could be grazed. How many of us think about the species on this planet going extinct, 150 of them every day, as we cut down the trees? We cut down the trees to put in factories because, hey, we got to have more stuff. We cut down the trees to graze cattle because got to have hamburgers. So this current state of conflict is just the closest to home for a lot of us. But this myth of separation has been creating violence for a long time. Tens of thousands of children die every day of starvation, while we actually produce enough grain to feed 10 billion people a day. There's only 7-point-something billion on the planet. But the grain that we grow, instead of being fed to people, is being fed to cows and pigs and chicken who are going to become the hamburgers and the hot dogs and the chicken McNuggets. How many people, when they sit down to a glass of wine or an alcoholic beverage, think about the people who could have been fed with the grapes or the grain that go into the production of that? And none of this is about guilt. It's about empowerment. It's about awareness. It's about consciousness. It's about simply being aware how the thread of our lives interweaves with the thread of life on planet Earth. And so whether it's about our discriminatory practices at work, whether it's about our eating habits or our shopping habits, whether it's about the way that we treat people of color, people of different races or religion, whether it's about the way that we choose what brand of shampoo to buy. It all comes down to this eroded consciousness that makes us think we are separate. And the only solution is to raise our consciousness. And so the way to deal with the eroded consciousness, the broken mind, is to rebuild it, to commit ourselves to being conscious. And realize that's very different than guilt. It's simply about conscious awareness. Every one of us has been put here with full free will to make whatever choice we want to make. Everyone knows their own economic situation, their own disposable income limit, their own dietary needs. But let us make our decisions consciously. Everything we do has a ripple impact on everyone in the world, ranging from how we speak, how we hire, how we shop, how we eat, how we dress, how we travel. All of it. And it's incredibly exciting because it means in every moment we have an opportunity to be conscious. So begin with yourself. Commit to consciousness. Share that with people in your world. And slowly, 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 we recreate a consciousness of oneness, a consciousness of love, a consciousness that knows that we are interlinked and interlocked, a consciousness rooted in real union, not just because we practice yoga and we know it means union, but real, experiential knowing of union. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evenings for those of you in India, where it's evening. A beautiful day for those of you in the rest of the world, a morning and afternoon. I will see you on Thursday for Satsang, and then on Friday for our meditation. But tomorrow, Wednesday, at 6:30, we have actually a very special event. 6:30 to 7 tomorrow evening, we will be live for a very special water blessing, water event, together with World Unity Week, Unity Earth, Unify, Uplift, Connect, and all of our beautiful partners in this World Week of Unity. Tomorrow we'll be celebrating water. So at 6:30 in the evening, India time, 6 in the morning in California, you can figure the rest out based on wherever you are. For half an hour in Puja Swamiji's Divine Presence, we'll be speaking about water, praying for water, sharing how each of us can be a water protector, and performing a sacred water blessing ceremony. So that's tomorrow, Wednesday, and then again Thursday we'll be back with our satsang.